Hey, what's up, YouTube? Little man with a big opinion here. Today's video is going to cover the first 5 things when you start getting into SHTF or preparedness or world without rule of law or any one of those scenarios. The first 5 things that you should get or start doing. They're in no particular order. I think all 5 of them should, at least have a groundwork for all 5 of them before you move on to any other things in the, the prepping world. So number 1 is, water. If we're going off of the 3, the rule of 3, you can survive 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food, give or take, a few days, in all of those scenarios. And so with water, you should have, a general. I'm going to give it a second. There's an ambulance wanting to go by. But with water, the hardest thing with water is having enough storage space in your home or apartment or wherever you live to store, copious amounts of it, liberal amounts of it. And so for this one, they say a gallon a day per person is what you need. I myself only have 2 weeks for me, my girlfriend, and our cats. And so what I've done to supplement that is I've done the research. I know where, the closest, creeks and rivers and, freshwater sources are. And I've got the appropriate water filtration devices to, be able to turn that water into drinkable water. And so when you're, preparing and it comes to water, you need to, first have a small, storage of water. And then second, you need to have ways to filter more water. Because unless you've got, you're on a piece of property and you have a well, then you're going to need some more water. Next item is food. Like I said, 3 weeks without food. I think it was Canadian Prepper that he popularized the term. We're three work days away from chaos, and that's due to the United States and a lot of the Western world functioning on a just-in-time delivery service, which, firsthand I can, attest to that. I work at Pizza Hut. There've been a handful of times where, we're getting ready to make dough for the night, and we don't have any more in the freezer, and the next, batch of dough is coming up, in the morning, and they're like, well, it's gonna, it sucks for the people in the morning because they have to make all that dough really fast. Whereas, we could slowly make it throughout the night. Our walk-in freezer is just big enough to accommodate 2 weeks worth of, making pizzas and, nothing more. We're constantly, having to get supplies in for stuff. And that's the same with a lot of these big box stores. If they're out of something on a shelf and you ask for it, a lot of the times they'll tell you, well, we don't have any extra in the back, but the shipment's supposed to be here in 6 hours, or it's supposed to be here tonight, and we'll stock it for the morning. So the just-in-time delivery system makes it to where if something were to happen, and hurricanes are the perfect example for the state of Texas. Our stores clear out in a matter of hours if there's any known prediction that the hurricane's going to hit your area, or the flood waters and the high rains are going to hit your area. For some reason, people that live off of 3 sodas a day now need 10 bottles of water per person per day. And it's just nuts. Well, you could, it's nice if you were going to the store, during preparing for a natural disaster, and what you were preparing for was, hey, I'm just going to go grab some extra stuff, so I'll eat this instead of, breaking into my preps. So, food is very important. I would say at a minimum, start out with a month, and just slowly work your way up from that. If you want to break it down even lower, start out with a week's worth of food, and you can see how much room that'll take up within your dwelling. And make it foods you're gonna eat. Don't just store a bunch of stuff that has a massive shelf life, and you're gonna hate yourself when you have to eat it. And so, I store MREs, I store Mountain House, I've got the rice and beans. At the end of the day, I'll eat anything if it means I have food in my belly. And I've done food stockpile videos, so if you want to check those out, I'm not going to go into huge detail on the food aspect of this prep. But in the United States, the average household only keeps enough food to last them for 1 week in their home. People get paid on Friday, they go to the store, they get their groceries for the next week, and it's rinse and repeat. And so, if you had 2 weeks of permanent food that you never touched, you're ahead of almost the entire, United States population. Number 3 on my list is shelter. So for this one, if you plan on bugging out, then you need, adequate shelter, whether it's, an army poncho and a wet weather, sleeping bag, or if it's a tent. If you're planning on bugging in, then shelter, kind of goes along the lines of, be able to maintain that shelter. Are you able to, heat your shelter if you didn't have power? If you've got the funds for it, are you able to, maintain some resemblance of, a house with power if you were out of power? Do you have candles within the home for a power outage to provide light? Do you have, if you're planning on bugging in, I would say shelter is everything that makes your life as normal as possible within your dwelling. So if you live in a place where it gets cold, or it snows a lot, then you need to have a way to heat said shelter. If you live in a place where it's hot, then you're probably just gonna have to leave your doors open and pray that it doesn't get sweltering inside. And then in entertainment while you're stuck in your shelter, protection inside the shelter. And so that leads into the next thing on the list, and that is protection. Preppers have a huge fixation on, I'm going to stock up on all of the guns and ammunition that I can, and they kind of want to Mad Max the end of the world. And I can tell you now, that's probably not a good idea. Bullets will only get you so far, and that's saying you survive every firefight that you're a part of. And so, I don't want to take my chances. The bullets are mainly for, a bugging situation. where I have to protect what I've spent, years and lots of money working on. So, on the protection side of it, at a bare minimum, I would say, one handgun, one, rifle, and one shotgun. And breaking each of those down, 1,000 rounds for all three of them, I would say that's the perfect number. Some people say, 500 for your handgun. Some people, it's just your preference. For instance, for me, we've got a few thousand shotgun rounds, but I also do a lot of dove hunting and, waterfowl hunting. And so that'll be a source of food for me. Same thing with, one of my long guns. I've got, a few hundred rounds for it, but on average, I only shoot 4 rounds out of that gun a year because it's strictly a deer rifle. And so, and then, the handgun is, I'd say 99% of the time is, self-defense, close quarter combat. Maybe if you had good stalking skills, you could use it, for hunting. But, this is mostly for protection. If, funds are a big issue, there are tons of firearms in the, $100 to $300 range. But spending all of your preps on firearms is not going to make you more prepared than, the average redneck. So, and, don't just limit it to firearms. You can get, bows and crossbows and knives and, swords and canes and, anything that you can use for a self-defense. Maybe you're fairly pacifist and you don't want to, kill people. And so you just, spray them with mace and run. I don't know. Anything that gives you a tactical edge in defending yourself makes you, the most likely outcome in winning that situation, then go for it. If you believe that spraying someone with mace to incapacitate them and you can make a hasty getaway, then go for it. If you believe putting, 3 rounds of 45 ACP hollow point into someone that is, attacking you or trying to steal from you, if you think that's your prerogative, go for it. I'm not, the judge of, who gets what, event when they're planning on breaking the law. So the last one on my list, it's pretty, subjective, and that's knowledge. So what I mean by knowledge is watching, all these YouTube videos from Canadian Prepper and City Prepping and Viking Preparedness. Those are the top 3 I can think of in my head. But, they've got great videos. I'm working on my prepping videos, so I've got a handful of them if you, like to watch my other videos. But all these people, including myself, we're pushing out knowledge. It gets the gears turning in the head. For people that have no idea what anything about prepping is, them watching this video, they'll have, a general understanding of what they should start doing. Most of these YouTube videos, most of these YouTube videos, they put out good, information, good content, and it's all free as long as you don't care about watching a couple of ads in someone's video. And so, all of this knowledge is free. There's probably ebooks that are free. I know there's books you can buy. There's, seminars that you can go to. There's tons of different things that you can do to, gather knowledge. If you're a prepper and you're watching the show and you don't know how to, make bread from scratch, and when I say scratch, all the way from, grounding your own wheat into flour. I haven't gone that far, but I have, used the flour and turned it into a dough and, made that into bread. And I did it in a Dutch oven, and it was kind of crappy. And I definitely, that's a skill that I want to hone, perfect a little bit more. But that just goes to show, like, something as simple as bread that we spend $1.50 at the convenience store or like Walmart. If we didn't have a big box store to sell it to us, how many people know how to make the bread? How many people can make a water filter out of natural minerals and different items? How many people know how to make gunpowder from scratch? I actually learned how to do that, and it's disgusting. But knowledge, it's subjective. If you want to spend all your time learning how to do gardening stuff and be able to grow your own food, awesome. You're ahead of so many people that just pack away heirloom seeds, and then they're not going to open them up until TEOTWAWKI, SHTF, and this all these other things, like that falls in the food category. The water category, making the water filtration, the shelter, maybe learning how to build a hooch out of like an army poncho and stuff. The protection, using your firearms. I would say knowledge is also training. So, using your firearms, getting proficient with them. How I was talking about my deer rifle earlier in this video. I normally shoot, on a perfect year, 4 rounds from my deer rifle. 3 rounds to make sure it's still sighted in, and then 1 round to drop the deer. And a semi-perfect year is 5 rounds, so you have to shoot the deer a second time. But all of these things are items within the prepping world that if you're just getting started or you don't know where to start, then these 5 are the perfect, in my opinion, the perfect way to start your prepping career. So I think that just about wraps it up. If you've made it this far and you liked what I had to talk about, please like the video. If you like what I'm doing with my channel, please consider subscribing. And if you'd like to support the channel, please consider donating to my Venmo. I'll leave the information for that in the bottom of each video. I'll catch you next time.